Salim.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome to Mrs. Place.
It's a pleasure to be here, man.
And
I lovely place too, you know.
Thank
Very
you.
nice.
We're moving along. We have full bookings for March on the weekends, and I want to thank you for the books.
Yes, ma'am.
The book is just talked about Harold, and many people tried to confiscate my one and only copy, so I had to lock it down. But I wanted to pose something to you based on your intellect, but also your political savvy and the ability that you have to compare and contrast through history. And I was telling Mark earlier, that's the value of having the opportunity of living to a certain point and having been involved as a young person, not just recently getting on the bandwagon. So what I wanted to do is to pose to you, and I know we're always talking about forums, but I think we're at a teachable moment for our African American youth or people who have not taken the time to get that political education that they need. And here in 2008, there are many similarities, in my opinion, that are being contrived that resemble 1968. In that there will be a Democratic convention dealing with this presidential piece. There's some rule changes that appear to be disenfranchising the people. But I would like, do you think that we can somehow or another harness this time to educate our people in terms of learning how this government works in terms of electoral process? Because when I'm hearing our people talk about constantly, saying you can't change the rules, number one, we didn't have anything to do with making the rules. And so if we want to have something to do with changing or not changing, we need to be involved in the process of how the rules are made. So in what capacity or what way do you think that we can harness this particular time politically to take advantage of the historical similarities and context that even led to Shirley Chisholm running in 72, led to Nation Time Gary in 72, but mainly 68, where the young white so-called radicals were so involved in the political process that it led to a clash at the political Democratic convention in Chicago that may very well lead to some type of clash in, I think it's Denver in 2008.
The similarities, I hear what you're saying. I mean, there's a lot more, and an unprecedented level of white participation in Barack Obama's campaign, for example. And so, in that way, there's similarities. And it's a teachable moment because there's so many black people who are involved in Barack's campaign, and I hear more concern about the political process now than I've heard in a long time. If you listen to talk radio, for example, people are aware of little nuances that they never were aware of before. And that's only because of Barack's, the excitement that he's
also because he's an African American, and African Americans are gravitating because he's an African American.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's that. I mean, and that offers an amazing opportunity. And then you hear a lot of these among young white people and black people. He's become the candidate, a movement. And then and that's the same thing with Harold Washington. I think Harold Washington offers the clearest example. It was a movement candidacy, and in much the same way that Barack's is, and that kind of extra political emotion that's generated by that kind of candidacy offers openings in many realms.
But also, even though I made that point, but also on this level of the national election, we have something that occurred, as I have mentioned to you probably on the radio show, that occurred in 2004 that clearly indicated to us that on any given day, if these people decide that they want to change the direction of who becomes the president, they can do that through this computerized voting, and they're doing it. It's sneaking up on us now. I mean, you're hearing reports out of D.C., you're hearing reports out of New York and other places where, in Ohio, the last Super Tuesday, where the voting machines didn't work, the polling places didn't open on time. And we know some of these things occur in every election, but it's important when it gets to the point where it changes who may be the president. And my concern.
And the super delegates. I mean, that's
and that too, right? That's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying, we just need some clarification on how this process came about. Who was responsible for it coming about? Who can offer the leverage now to ensure that if that is a rule that people want to abide by, that it is enforced. But somehow or another, where the people can, and I know capitalism and so-called democracy and the republic and all of that plays into this, and maybe that's what we need to have a discussion on. But I mean, clearly from our community's perspective, there's a level of immaturity in these discussions that disturbs me. Number one, they're basically emotional. And number two, they're emotional because this generation was not around in '68 when people became angry, young people became angry that McCarthy didn't get the nod and Humphrey did. Because McCarthy had a similar following that Barack had.
In some ways, yes.
Right, excluding black people. We weren't into that much because there wasn't no black folks.
Right.
So, you know, we kind of laid back and said, well, you know, they're going to make the rules for us anyway, but we have an opportunity to be...
You know, during that time also, there was a Peace and Freedom Party in California. Elbridge Cleaver was messing around.
Right.
So there was a lot of marginal agitation going on in the black community, although there was not that much mainstream focus. Now, it's mainstream. And that's really uncharted territory, you know. I'm kind of following this as looking at it as a laboratory, just to kind of see what happens, because there's so many interesting cross trends and variables, exactly. You know?
But I know the think tanks are on it, the white think tanks. So where did you say the black think tanks were? My point is, I think we need to begin to do that, and I guess what I'm leading to, I would like to offer at some point, if it doesn't manifest, because I like to wait to see if other people do things, I think in Mrs. Place, we're going to have to hold the kind of forum that will specifically educate and answer those kinds of questions to give us a direction. I mean, like you said, you're watching it as a laboratory. A lot of people are watching it as a laboratory, but it appears to me that, in my opinion, 40 years after we were practicing self-determination and we apparently appeared to have some kind of agenda in terms of what our needs were from the government, we've abandoned that. I mean, we've kind of like hooked into a personality and forget that. You know, case in point, you know, people are...
Do you read Black Agenda Report?
Yeah, that's Bruce and them out of Atlanta.
And also Glenn Ford from Jersey, and Black Communicator and whatnot. They have a clear critique of Barack Obama from a very radical perspective.
Okay, I haven't downloaded it.
Yeah, I mean, and they make clear just how wanting he is ideologically. And he is indeed.
Yes.
But you have to be, in order to be a mainstream, have mainstream viability. And people know that.
Of course.
And so there's a lot that's left unsaid in this campaign, and a lot of people don't want to bring it up because they don't want to, you know, tarnish a brother's
or mess it up for him,
exactly.
his chances. But I really relate that similarly to the emperor with no clothes.